Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Gia. I'm a 28-year-old lady who, yes, still lives in my mom's basement. And today I wanted to give you the May and June monthly wrap-ups. If you would not be surprised to hear that I haven't been having the best time reading lately, then hi, thanks for being a returning viewer. No, actually, I'm having a terrible time right now. I have 4 read books in the last 2 months and 2 DNFs, so I attempted to read 6 books and I only read 4 this month. I don't know what more there is to say. I'm just not having a fun time right now. I am trying so hard to get through my priority list, and I am really doing my best to get through them, but I think I'm having that thing where, and it's not really something that has a name, but I put these books on my TBR so long ago, and by hell or high water I will read them this year because I said I would read them by now and I haven't. But I was a different person when I added these books to my TBR, so I feel like I'm betraying myself because I feel like I should have liked some of these, and I feel like if I had read them some time ago then I would have liked them, but also I don't know. I can't tell that. So I've been a little bit disappointed. Let's just go ahead and get started. This will probably be a shorter wrap-up video than my previous ones, but first book I read was King of Envy by Anna Huang. I know it is not a wrap-up video if there's not an Anna Huang book in it, but I haven't read an Anna Huang book since this one. So I don't think the next one in the series is available though, so that might be because of that. But regardless, I haven't read one since. And this one was okay. It was about the supermodel Ayana and Vuk. His name was Vuk, V-U-K, and he was a Serbian mob-affiliated guy who had a dubious past, who had done some things, and now he is just a angel investor, I think is the word, where he's like a quiet investor in a lot of companies. And the main thing that he is known for is that he doesn't talk to people and that he writes things down through notes, and that he doesn't speak. This is due to an incident that had happened when he was younger in the dubious past times of his life, and something happened to his voice, I believe. So he doesn't talk very much, and he has this obsessive thing over this supermodel named Ayana. She's a big deal. She's a very, very big deal, and she is in a engagement of convenience. And of course, that marriage of convenience becomes inconvenient when feelings get in the way. And I rated this 4 stars. It was okay. One thing I did like about this is that Vuk is mostly nonverbal, so he only speaks occasionally, and he uses a lot of ASL, which Ayana does know. So I appreciated the accessibility that was shown here, and it wasn't like he doesn't talk to anybody, but she teaches him how to speak kind of book. He still doesn't really talk to people by the end. He talks a little bit more, and that's one of the things that helps you know that he's opening up to her, is that he speaks to her, but he never fully becomes verbal. He does keep the elements of being semi-verbal by choice. So I did appreciate that it wasn't she can change him type of story, because that was who he was from the very beginning, is that he was this kind of mysterious, quiet guy. I mean, it was an Anna Huang book, and it was the epitome of the envy sin, I guess. Even really, I can't even say oh, it was only a 3-star because it was okay. It was 4 because I enjoyed it. It just wasn't very notable. You know, it wasn't huge. I guess you could say it's a 3.5. Next, I attempted to read and did not succeed at reading A Reign of Rose by Kate Golden. This is the sequel to A Promise of Peridot, which is the sequel to A Dawn of Onyx. I DNF'd this book simply because I stopped giving a fuck. I stopped giving a fuck about these characters. Thought this book was going in a direction that I thought was interesting, and it didn't. So at the end of A Promise of Peridot, Arwen is kidnapped by King Lazarus, which I could go on a massive tangent and probably dedicate an entire video as to the naming of dads and kings in romantasy genre. But Arwen is abducted by Lazarus, which is Cain's father. And because Arwen is the one true last fae in existence, Lazarus wants to Basically, Jafar and Jasmine his way to success, and he would like to have children with her so that his children could be full fae, but that didn't make sense because he himself wasn't full fae. It was very confusing. And then Cain goes through some trials and tribulations that trial and tribulate to become full blood fae. So then Cain and Arwen are full blood fae, but Lazarus still wants to have kids with Arwen, even though now his son is full blood fae and they could have kids and continue on, but Lazarus doesn't want that. And there was this whole like seduction angle that Lazarus was trying to go for by having Arwen be summoned to where he was taking a bath, and it was like a public, like not public because it was a royal bath, but it was like kind of like how like a Roman bath is like a really big room and a really big bathtub, and he summons her there, and he's like naked in the tub, and he challenges her to get in the tub with him, and she does, but nothing happens. She just decides that she's not going to be intimidated by him, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna get naked and get in this tub. That's it. At the end, I didn't fucking care. You know, we have the Sacred Stones, which is the title of the trilogy, and you had the Onyx Kingdom, the Peridot Provinces, the Amber Kingdom, the Rose all of them are kingdoms except Peridot, and then there's the Jade Isles, or the Isle of Jade, and you could just tell that was supposed to be what Kate Golden considered to be the Asian island, is where there's the diversity over there. It's on the Isle of Jade, or I'm so sorry, I don't remember what it's called, but it mentioned Jade, the stone. And you could just tell that Kate Golden was like, hey, yeah, that's where the diversity is. It's nowhere else though. And did we go there? No, we didn't go there. So really it was just meant nothing. And the entire point of this book is that we have to get to the Rose Kingdom. But up until this point, I don't know what purpose the Rose Kingdom was supposed to serve in order to get to this point. So really, I have no idea what we were supposed to be doing there. And I should put all of this in a DNF video, but so I might just repeat myself. I should just repeat myself sometimes when I do videos, because not everybody watches everything. But at the end of the day, I stopped giving a single fuck. Whenever I picked up this book, I said, I don't care. You know what? I don't care. So I stopped reading it. But you know what would have made me continue reading it was if, and I know this is potentially a genre blend that would have been unexpected in this, but I would have kept reading if Arwen actually got with Lazarus, the evil dad king. I would have actually kept reading if that happened, because it would have been a father-son love triangle. And not to say that the villain should be considered in a love triangle, because then you'd have to add like 2 more books to the series. You can't just have that come up in the last book in a series. But if Kate Golden decided to go with the dad fucking route, I might have actually continued reading it. And I still don't understand the whole like Fae thing and about how Cain is actually still a dragon shifter. And we still got very little discussion about Cain being a dragon shifter. Just Cain shifted into his dragon form and took us where we needed to go. It's like, okay, what does he look like? What's the story behind the dragon shifters here? Is Lazarus a dragon shifter? I don't remember. And he's obsessed with becoming Fae, so he wants to be a Fae dragon shifter. Are those 2 things that can coexist? Are they considered species? Is that considered a bispecial specimen? I just made that shit up. But what is the classification of being here? I'm confused. Can you be both at once? Can you be part Fae, part dragon shifter? Do they cancel each other out? Is that too magical? Is that too whimsical for this? I'm still so confused. And then Arwen is just full blood Fae, but she's very good at healing. She can heal herself. That's what's the biggest thing here, is that she can heal herself, and that's not something that normal healers can do. But then Cain is over here being a Fae dragon shifter, but in my head I just think maybe he has like dragonfly wings or something, because I don't know what he's supposed to look like. But yeah, anyway, I DNF'd that because I stopped giving a fuck. The next book I read was Priory of the Orange Tree. I rated it 4 stars simply because I didn't know what else to rate it. My feelings about Priory of the Orange Tree are that I need it to be a TV show. Like, I listened to it on Audible because I knew that was the only way I was going to be able to truly understand the book. And I think that maybe because the book was so large, I split it up over several listening sessions. And by that, I mean, like, I read it over the course of like 3 weeks. And maybe that might have been because I had it as an Audible buy instead of a library book loan, because I wasn't exactly incentivized to listen to it any faster. But I wasn't listening to it in big enough chunks that it was making all of the sense to me. I was looking up the Wikia of Priory of the Orange Tree because there was a lot that I wasn't understanding. And to a degree, I kind of get that when I think about Game of Thrones. That was a series that, or is a series that I care enough about that when those instances came up, I was reading more about it, and I was getting really interested in the lore and the background of all the families in Game of Thrones. And that's how I became like such a huge fan, is because I started to understand the world of Westeros pretty fucking well. And even though I haven't read all of the books, I want to listen to them. Actually, I do have them, but I want to listen to them. But I know a lot about the books. Even if I haven't physically read them, I've watched a lot of content creators talk about the books. So I feel like I need to have that kind of treatment for Priory, that there is just too much that it demanded from me, that I needed to give more effort to it. And that's not like in any way, shape, or form am I insulting the book. Do I think it's bad? I think it is a very dense tome. This is a encyclopedia size of a book. It is massive, and there's a lot involved in here. And I really, really enjoyed it. It's just, I think that I need to revisit it at some point, or become a TV show, please. I'm actually begging at this point. I would love to watch that, but it's definitely one of those books that you have to dedicate a lot of time to it if you want to get the full enjoyment out of it, because it is so like steeped in like history and stuff. And again, I'm going to compare it to Game of Thrones in that respect. Fire and Blood, which is the entire like history of the Targaryen dynasty. That's a textbook. That's like a history textbook about the Targaryen family, and that's it. And Priory of the Orange Tree is similar in that it is always telling you about historical accounts of stuff that's already happened. The prioress had a different version of history as other people did. And there's a lot going on when it comes to historical revisionism and how different people look at the same event and decide who was right and who was not. It's definitely one of those books that has rereading value, because you're going to learn something more about the story the second and third time that you read it. So Priory of the Orange Tree, you get 4 stars from me, but you probably will become a 5. Next, I failed to read A Winter's Promise. This was on my 2025 priority list. My reasons for DNFing include the fact that I found out that this was a Christian dystopian fantasy. I think is 3 words that can be strung together in a sentence, because in the very beginning of the book, the author talks about when the world gets really complicated and things get really crazy, then God does something stupid and he makes a mistake and breaks everything, and mentions God, capital G, by name. And then when you come into the story, everything's separated into like this sci-fi society where people are on different arcs. And when I think of arcs, I think of the show The 100. I hate that I compare stuff to things all the time, but in the show The 100, the arc was like the International Space Station, but like all of the survivors on Earth were living on it. So in A Winter's Promise, you had these people on different arcs floating in the sky. It was very, very sci-fi. And the main character, whose name I don't remember right now, Ophelia. Her name was Ophelia. Anyway, she was part of this arc that was really focused on like archiving. So she was like an archivist who worked in a museum, and she had the thing where if she touches an object, she can tell like everything about its past owners. I don't remember what that's called. I'll put it right here, but it is a thing. So she wears gloves all the time. She has like really high anxiety. Like, she was definitely a good character. I didn't hate her, but her story is that she has to marry someone from a different arc for like the continuing of society or something. And she has been trying not to get married for a very long time. She doesn't want to get married, and she's stopped herself from getting married this whole time. Well, she ends up marrying into a different arc, which is something that they don't necessarily approve of. And I did not appreciate this one scene in particular. It turned me off from the book almost immediately. But Ophelia is engaged to be married to some guy in another arc. He is the assistant to like the treasury secretary. So he's a finance bro, taxes and stuff. So Ophelia is told that she needs to not leave her compound or wherever she's at. And she doesn't listen because she doesn't have a brain cell between her fucking ears. So she decides to go out and explore. And she ends up in a situation where she is talking to someone who is an emissary character. And he asks her who she is. And she goes, "Oh, I'm Ophelia's cousin." And the emissary goes, "Oh, good. I'm glad. Because if you were Ophelia, I would have to deflower you." And I was like, I was actually driving. I was driving when I heard this. And I was like, I need you to pause right now. I think I actually like paused the audiobook. And I was like, please be so fucking for real right now. So the idea was that this emissary who was evil, I mean, he has to be evil because he wanted to coerce someone into that. And Ophelia was also, I don't know how old she was, but in my brain she was like 17. I have this character that is fish out of water. Her fiance is weird and mysterious, and he's a finance bro with a role in the government, and people don't like him. And she goes out on her own, gets basically backed into a corner by this guy who's questioning who she is, and he's an emissary, so he travels around a lot. So this is probably not the first time he's done this. And out of hatred towards who her fiance is, so that he can seduce her and ruin her? Question mark. Is that what we're going for here? And this scene turned me off so bad. It actually killed me. And Ophelia was extremely infantilized. She was basically treated like a child. Every woman character in this book was mean. Every single one of them was mean and nasty, and they like spit on her. They hit her. They were so mean and so rude, to the point where it was like, oh, so these are just caricatures for what the author sees when she sees other women. And I hate to say that. I hate to put those words out into existence, but it really felt like misogyny. Like, this book feels very misogynistic. I hate to put it like that. I mean, I don't want to say that it's like a mistranslation or a tonal mistranslation because the book was published in French, or like there's like a chronic misogyny problem. But I mean, I can't really say that because America has a chronic misogyny problem in literature. But that besides the point. But it was a type of misogyny in literature that took me by surprise, because usually misogyny in literature to me is just like egregious sex scenes in a brothel a la Game of Thrones. Or the Witcher version is all women are sluts and whores and Geralt wants to fuck all of them except Yennefer. Yennefer is different, which leads me into the next book that I actually read, which was A Sword of Destiny by Andrzej Sapkowski. If you have watched the Witcher TV show, a lot of what the early books are in the Witcher series are going to feel very familiar. The Last Wish is going to feel like deja vu. The Last Wish was actually, I think personally, very accurately adapted into the TV show. That's a personal thing that I feel. I also have heard that once you read Blood of Elves, which is the first book in the series, you will see where the TV show has deviated a lot of ways. But the short stories that were written in both prequels, which were The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny, they do feel very familiar. So I rated it 4.5 because there really wasn't anything else I could really say about it. And I mean, The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny are literally just a combination of three things. Either you have anime camping episode vibes. It's all vibes. It's Geralt like going down and fighting a monster, and he learns some moral lesson. And then number two is a entire story dedicated to a moral lesson, in which like Geralt walks into a bar and sees a dwarf being kicked in the face, and he learns that dwarves are people. That's not a story. That's just my like telling you like kind of what happens here is you have anime camping episode, Geralt learns a moral lesson, and then the third one is Yennefer's in this one, so Geralt has to act natural. And by that, I mean Yennefer's in this one, and Geralt will inconvenience himself in every way, shape, and form to be next to her for the entire chapter. I almost said entire season, but I'm talking about the book, not the TV show. So literally, like, every time that Yennefer is on the page, or like Geralt like wakes up one day and goes, I have to go find this monster somewhere, and then it's like, hey, they were talking about this mysterious witch that came into town recently. She's been staying at X Inn. And then Geralt is like, I wonder if it's Yennefer. And it always is. And by that time, Geralt just goes, okay, he thinks to himself, all right, I'm going to do everything I can to find out exactly what she's doing here. And then they're going to have like this like spitting match back and forth where Yennefer is like, you can't come back into my life and ruin it just because I just happened to be here. Like, I'm doing my own thing right now. Leave me alone. And Geralt just kind of like, you know, Geralt wants her so bad. He is a yearner through and through, but for some reason, these two just never can communicate properly, at least in these earlier stories. So in one of the stories in A Sword of Destiny, you kind of get the idea that Geralt and Yennefer had a falling out some years ago, and they haven't seen each other in several years. So they met in The Last Wish, and in Sword of Destiny, you're finding out that they did have like this thing going, and then Geralt left in the middle of the night to go do something, and he left Yennefer, and she is saying, you can't just re-enter my life the same way that you were in it the last time and think that things can be the same. And then she manipulates him into doing something by saying like, oh, we can get back together if you do this thing for me. And then he does it, and she goes, just kidding. Like, there's a lot of like emotional manipulation going on between the two of them, and it's actually very funny. But it's even funnier to watch Geralt as a character who's this really mysterious, semi-verbal monster hunter go like absolutely like awooga over his like a situationship that he sees like once every 3 years, and he just completely inconveniences himself to like follow her everywhere until the end of the story. And at the end of the story, he learns a moral lesson. So it's just, I have to laugh. I really have to laugh sometimes about these because it's so good. And last but not fucking least, I read A Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent, which was also on my 2025 priority list. And Book Talk, you're on your last fucking warning. I'm telling you, I'm being so serious right now. This book made me consider going on a strike that I'm not going to read any lockdown era romantasy because I've just about fucking had it. I'm going to be referring a lot to my Goodreads review. In fact, I'll probably read it for you because it's been long enough, and by long enough, I mean it's been almost a month since I finished reading this, that I am kind of like not as able to string a sentence together at the moment as to why this book made me feel the way I did, other than to just look at my Goodreads review, which is where I wrote down all of my feelings at the time. All I kept thinking about was that the Moon Palace reminded me of the first Witcher story about Geralt and the Striga, but yet this was also a gladiator event at the same time. So the way that the story is presented is that Araya is entering this like Hunger Games gladiator event type of thing, and they are locked in this place called the Moon Palace, place where they can stay, and everyone kind of breaks off into their own teams and who's allied with who, and they can all like sleep in different areas of the Moon Palace. So it's an actual physical location, but it is also where they have like the gladiator type events. The way that this was constructed was a little confusing to me because I was also wondering if this was going to do that same thing that Fourth Wing did, which is also not very good. That thing that Fourth Wing did where they were like, yeah, like we're all in like a military style bunker where everyone is kind of training together, and it's illegal to kill people that are cadets, but also wink wink, it's not super illegal. So I was wondering if we were going to have this like, okay, everybody who's a contestant is staying in the same place and they're going to have to sleep with one eye open and like be careful because there could be somebody waiting for them around the corner, and outside of these gladiator events they're kind of living in a place where they could die at any time outside of the event. When they first get into the Moon Palace with Araya and Rain and Misha, I think is the other girl. Misha says, oh, we let you have the room with the window for obvious reasons. And I was like, obvious reasons? Is it because y'all are a vampire and she's not? But yeah, we didn't really, I mean, we discussed that there were different types of vampires, and but there wasn't like the vampires can't go into the sun type of vampirism here. So when she said, oh yeah, we let you have the room with the window for obvious reasons, I'm like, the reasons were not that obvious, babe. Like, you didn't tell me that these vampires can't see a ray of sun before they shrivel up and die. So where did the audience come from? Were they there the entire time? Did the characters erupt from the floor into an arena for the plot to continue? Are they all in the Moon Palace like it's the Big Brother house and they can kill each other at any time? Why is nobody trying to do that? I'm not an expert on this movie series, but my dad was a massive fan of this movie series. This book had extremely similar vibes to the Underworld series. And I knew, like, as soon as I was starting to read it, I was like, something about this feels extremely familiar. And then when I actually looked into it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. In Underworld, you have Celine, who is a vampire assassin with an adopted father named Victor, who actually killed her family. Oriah is a vampire assassin with an adopted father named Vincent, who actually killed her family and actually is her biological father. Something about it felt familiar in a way that I was like, hold on, and not in a normal way where like, everyone says that Romantasy copies ACOTAR. To be clear, there were some ACOTAR parallels, but Sarah Janet didn't invent anything about Romantasy. She's just the one who happens to have sold the most books. And once again, I could go on a fucking tangent and probably make a video about the fact that dads, kings, and evil men always have names that are just in the same category. And I think of, Victor in Underworld, for example, Victor in Underworld, Vincent in The Serpent and the Wings of Night. You had Lazarus, which is a biblical name, in the Sacred Stone series. You had Nero in A River of Golden Bones, which was a Roman emperor. You have, their names are always fucking biblical. Like, I can't tell you how many times the name David has been the name of like this big bad. And David's my dad's name. So every time I'm just like, damn. So it was in him the whole time. Like, he just acted like that because his name was David. I'm sorry, Dad. Rest in peace. Actually, no, don't rest in peace, because then you wouldn't have any fun. Where was the info dumping about half vamps before now? Is this a thing? Will this be touched on later? Who knows? So there was a little teensy bit of a sprinkle of the idea of what the implications are for half vampires to exist, which Bride by Ali Hazelwood talked about half vampires and like the political implications of half vampires. That is touched on there. And Vampire Academy had Dampiers, which this is not like a unique thing, that like when you put people in a room and maybe they are of different species, but their reproductive organs can complement each other, they're gonna fuck and they're gonna have kids. Like, I don't know why some of these series like pretend like there's the vampires over here and the werewolves over here and the humans over here. And I promise you, if they are all like anthropomorphic enough to be considered a different species or being, but they have like similar like human reproductive parts, they're gonna fuck and they're gonna reproduce. Like, I don't know why some of these authors are cowards when it comes to writing like this, and then plus like the political implications of like they always refer to them as half breeds in these books. They always bring up the word half breed for some reason as an insult, but that would be too interesting and too hard for some people to write, because it requires talent to write about political implications of something, or political implications of fucking anything in a lot of these books. So I was like, okay, so she's half vampire. Does that mean anything? Is that why she could like become like Vincent's heir later, but also she was adopted, but also not adopted because she was his biological kid, but also not a vampire. So how does this fit? And then I think Rain ends up being like leader of his house, like through adoption, like through vibes, really. It's like you got adopted so hard that the bonds of familial power recognized you as one of their own. Like, how hard do you have to be adopted for that to, how early do you have to be adopted for that to be the case? It's like, legally speaking, if you were adopted at age 22, like I was, is that not as powerful as if I was adopted at like age 8? You know, like this is getting into something that's like stupid and dumb, but like, I can't, because Rain wasn't biologically related to the house that he was a part of. He was literally just a son based on vibes. And I mean, yes, adopted kids are still like familial ties. I'm not saying it's not, but in a fantasy book where familial ties is connected to power and like blood is connected to power, you have to have something that says something about the fact that if you are not blood related, but the power still transfers to a non-blood relative, then you have something that's challenging the social construct or the political construct of how like familial ties and power is passed down. But also anybody can be anything all the time, and power can be passed down willy-nilly just as long as you have a relationship based on vibes that is good. Can they and then just write a will and say like, you know, like, oh yeah, in the event that none of my surviving children make it to adulthood and no one can inherit after me, I choose this kid. I choose Rain right here to be my heir. I tried really, really hard to ignore any references to ACOTAR because Sarah Janet didn't invent anything. She's just happened to be the person who's sold the most books. But sometimes you really can just tell. I almost said Reese. Rain has a thing that he says to Oriah whenever they're like bantering and it's getting a little spicy and she has a little attitude with him. He says, "There she is," as if to say like, she wasn't there a second ago. She was incorporeal about 30 seconds ago. There she is just hello, Feyre darling in different font. The most interesting things were the following: the goddess Nyaxia and her origin story. I wish I got more of that because a lot of the challenges in the gladiator event or whatever the fuck it was called, that was based on the trials of the goddess Nyaxia and what she had to go through. And in order to get the wish from Nyaxia, you have to do what she did, which I thought was interesting. I appreciated that. And I think that, again, in a different series, this could set up like historical implications and like historical revisionism and about how history isn't always told in the way that it is remembered. And I don't know, I'm a little bit whimsical about the idea of how we live in a society is not the way that society was lived previously. How we remember events is not how they were lived, because there's lots of things that have happened in history that we remember as happening in a certain order or happening in a certain way, and you might see certain people as victors and certain people as not. And that's why like feminist retellings exist. That's why certain reimaginings exist. When you're taking the story that is known in popular knowings and you either not even twist it on its head, but you give the perspective back to the person that the story is about. Like Medusa, best example. When you have these books that have this like goddess at the forefront, I really enjoy it when there is like some sort of challenging as to the ethos and the mythos of the society, and what are they challenging at the end of the day. Because in a book series, you want to know like over the course of a story that where you're going to be on page 1 is not where you're going to be on page 1000. Society is changing over the course of one book to 3, 4, or 5. You can shake the foundation of a book and really turn it into something that is like a more, even if it's a more progressive society or a society has changed in some way that it is different than where it was when it began. I find that to be extremely interesting. Again, sorry, but House of the Dragon does something extremely well, I think, in that because Fire and Blood is written like a fucking history textbook, the how we know about the events in the book is known from 3 perspectives. You have this Archmaester who is telling you everything from like a very clinical point of view. The A went to B, went to C, went to D. And then you had the High Septon who is translating everything that he knows through like this like holier than thou attitude. He doesn't want to tell about anything salacious. He doesn't want to talk about gossip. And then you have a court jester named Mushroom who is spilling all the tea. And when you have all of those perspectives converge, you can basically agree that if you have 3 perspectives that are agreeing on one set of events, then you can pretty much say that those events happened that way. But when it comes to things that happened off page, behind the scenes, or were only between the perspectives of 2 people who did not write the book that is that, then how are you supposed to know what actually happened? So House of the Dragon does something very interesting with historical revisionism in that it is, yes, the book is telling you the events of what happened based on the perspectives of 3 people who were not there, but there's lots of things that happened that we don't know about. And I think that when history is lived, it is remembered in its most sanitized version. And when you have stories like this with like, and I've gone on this like massive fucking tangent, but when you have stories like this where you have like this revered goddess or revered whatever the fuck, you want those beliefs to be challenged in some way. And who knows, maybe that's written about later on, but I'm not that fucking interested. I did kind of enjoy the father-daughter relationship between Oriah and Vincent. I did think that it was interesting. I mean, she loved him, but she hated him, which I can relate, girl. Believe me, I understand. The inclusion of the idea of half species, bringing in class commentary, if done correctly, but unlikely would not have been done here. And then this last thing, this is actually pretty funny, but I said that the whole betrayal of the love interest leading to the killing of the parent and then overthrowing your parents' rule, but then they save you by forcing you into a marriage, but that marriage creates forced proximity, and then you fall deeper in love in book 2. I don't know why that trope is so good, because at the end of the book, Rain kills Vincent and takes over because he was like betraying Oriah the entire time, and this was secretly his plan all along. He had greater motivations when he set out at the beginning of this book, but he is changed by his love for Oriah, so he saves her by forcing her into a marriage, and we all know what forced marriages do. They create proximity between 2 characters, and book 2 is just gonna be Oriah saying, "You killed my dad, I hate you, I'll never love you, blah blah blah," and then Rain is going to do several things that make Oriah second guess herself, and then she's going to realize that her dad was evil the entire time, and then she's going to, lay back and go, you know what? Yeah, we're going to have a surprise pregnancy trope at the end of this book. So there it is. I've already told you exactly what happens. I mean, whether or not that is actually what happens is neither here nor there, because I've just told you. I don't think that this book series is irredeemable. It feels underbaked, but not in a way that I think book 2 would bake it thoroughly for me. And then at the very bottom, I included a little bit about the whole like dad and king character thing that has been bothering me. You mean to tell me that with character names such as Oriah, Rain with an H, Misha, but it's spelled like Mische, Septimus, Ilana, Keturah, and Karis, the dad character, who is a main character with a complicated father-daughter relationship with the lead, is named Vincent? It really makes me think that like these authors don't really come up with names for the evil dads. They just pick one, or they'll put it in as like a placeholder, and they think, oh, I'm gonna name him Vincent until I think of a better name, but then they don't think of a better name and they just leave it there because it looks so out of place all the fucking time. Anyway, I rated it 2 stars, and I'm really considering going on fucking strike when it comes to romanticises that are written within a certain year period. If they are not published before 2020, I don't know if I want to read them anymore. I'm getting fucking tired. Anyways, I ended up yapping for an hour anyway, so that is all from me. Thank you so much for hanging out with me if you got to the end of this video. If you'd like to find me anywhere else, you can find me on Twitch and Twitter. Remember to drink water. This is not water, this is Coke. And be nice to each other and exude kindness and empathy with everything that you do. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!